This podcast is brought to you by Balancing Act. Teach, coach, mentor, inspire. A collection of candid observations on the challenges facing business leaders today. Balancing Act is authored by Dr. Andrew Temte and is available today on Amazon and other fine bookstores. We talked with musician, songwriter, and live sound engineer Dave Orr. We chat growing up with music, early influences, playing in local favorite Flibberty Gibbet, and what this area musician is excited for in 2021. You can find more conversations, food reviews, live music, and events on our website, lacrosselocal.com. I'm Amy.
And I'm Brent.
And this is Lacrosse Local.
All right, my name is David Orr, and everybody calls me Dave Orr, except for my parents and family. In fact, actually, my dad called me Dave one time in the presence of my mother. My mother got stone-faced. She gritted her teeth, and she said, "His name is David." And that was the last time my dad ever called me Dave. Anyway, I was born actually in Okinawa, Japan, actually. Dad was a captain in the Army during Vietnam at the time. We left there when I was 2. And how I got into music really was my dad was really into audio electronics. Now, he wasn't into the live music aspect of it like I am, but still that's kind of the roots of how I ended up getting into the audio thing. Is I grew up with an audio electronics lab in the basement. My dad used to design and build his own power amps, crossovers, and speaker cabinets, but it was all for home audio stuff. And he also played clarinet. So, we always pull out his clarinet from time to time around the house. He was never really a gigging musician or anything like that, but he liked to play, particularly jazz stuff. I mean, he was always playing around the house. And then my grandfather used to wake us up in the morning when we'd stay at my grandparents' house. They lived like 2 miles away from us. They had like a little hobby farm out in the country. And whenever we were staying there, my grandpa used to wake us up singing these old vaudeville songs. So he was always singing and everything. So I was always just kind of around it. My sister plays piano. My next door neighbors, I had 2 kids our age, and they were school teachers, and she was a music teacher and also taught piano. So she was my teacher's piano teacher, and then both those kids played piano as well. And I didn't actually end up starting playing music until the summer after I graduated high school. I started singing in church choir when I was 6 years old. Once I got into my teenage years, that all that kind of went by the wayside. But until I graduated, the summer I graduated from high school, and a buddy of mine, Mike Darbro, who's actually still in a band in the Chicago area, he played guitar and drums, and he lived in a little farmhouse out in the country. Grew up in Mount Morris, Illinois, which is 100 miles straight west of Chicago, but it's out in the sticks. It's a little farm town, so kind of had the best of both worlds. I had Chicago right there. Rockford, Illinois was like 20 minutes away. So I had urban stuff close enough that it was available for me when I got a little older. But yet I had the run of the town when I was a kid, be home by the time the street lights come on, be home or check in by the time the street lights come on. It was kind of how I was raised, so it was really a great way to grow up. But anyway, so that summer, after I graduated high school, I had a vehicle. He didn't. They're out in the country. I'd spent a bunch of time out there, and we would just jam. He taught me a couple of simple beats on the drums, and I just took to it. It just I was a natural. It just kind of came to me. And then I went off to college. He went off to the Army, and he sold me that drum set, which I still have to this day, for $100, with the stipulation that if ever I sell it back to him for the same. And I went off to college. A guy by the name of Mike McAbee, who is still a musician who plays around this area now, showed up in my doorway. I was at Luther College. This would have been the fall of 1986, with a 68 Chet Atkins Gretsch strapped around him, which is a relatively valuable guitar. He had a Amish beard and a big orange mullet. I mean, with hair halfway down his back, and he was wearing a pair of long johns tucked into combat boots, and then over top of the long johns, he had like these Scottish plaid pants cut off just above the knee, and then he had this like big maroon sweater that was too big for him that hung down to about halfway down his thigh, and then the sleeves, were so long that if you let them dangle, they'd be like 6-8 inches longer than his arms. And then he had like black horn rimmed sunglasses with orange lenses that matched the guitar and also matched his hair. And so he's like this kind of crazy looking dude. And he says, "Are you Dave?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "We're looking for a drummer to join our band." And I was like, "Well, I'm not very good." And I said, "I don't have any drums here." And he said, "Well, that's all right. My RA said we could use his drums. Are you interested?" And this is like 2 weeks into college. I got nothing else going on. I'm like, "Well, sure, I suppose." So we went over to the music building and we jammed for pretty much that whole night. We played ROCK in the USA probably a dozen times. We played Satisfaction by the Stones. We played some Clash. We played a bunch of his original tunes. Quite frankly, I sucked. I was not good, but I mean, I was a natural at drums, but I just hadn't done enough of it to be a really good player. But somehow I landed the gig, and next thing you know, 2 weeks into school, I'm in a band. I'd never in a million years would have guessed that.
I've seen you playing around town. I remember you kind of doing the music at Nighthawks. I've seen you in Flibberty Gibbet. I've seen you playing by yourself at the Freight House. It's kind of like you're a jack of all trades around the area, playing in different bands and also, being the sound engineer for a lot. What has been some of your musical influences kind of coming up from college till now?
Well, I mean, when I was growing up, my dad listened to jazz and classical. I mean, he was really into Duke Ellington. He was into Miles Davis. He was into Dave Brubeck, Cannonball Adderley. I mean, everything from big band to bebop to cool jazz. But then he was also into Beethoven, Vivaldi, Bach. All the classical greats. And then, like I said, my grandfather used to sing vaudeville songs to us. So those were my first earliest influences when I was really young. Then church choir, of course, and we had a pipe organ in our church. Always had an organist there. You can't help but have that stuff influence you, because that's the first music you hear when you're really young, and it sticks with you. And that's kind of where my love of jazz came from in particular. The first album I ever bought was Led Zeppelin 1, and I was probably in fifth grade at the time. And then I just loved it, so I ended up, within a year or two, I had all their albums. As I was going through my teen years in high school and all that, 70s rock in general, I was really into. I was really into Deep Purple. I was into Rush. I was into prog rock stuff. Yes, Genesis, particularly the old stuff. And of course, being a child of the 80s, radio was major, major, major big at the time. So all the stuff that was on the radio, you just couldn't escape. Now, frankly, this day and age, like all the hair band stuff and Jesse's Girl, Summer of '69, all that stuff, I've just heard so much of it that I just can't listen to it anymore. I mean, it's so ingrained in me, and I've played that stuff in bands over the years and all that stuff too. But it's just, I can't sit still musically. I've got to constantly be getting new influences and listening to new stuff. So that's kind of where I came from initially. The first band I was in, like I said, was with Mike McAbee. The band was called The Priorities, and I would describe us as cowpunk, kind of punk rock-ish sort of stuff with a country twang to it, kind of a country edge to it. A lot of our cover tunes were Clash and our old REM, The Cure, a lot of that kind of stuff. But then we had a lot of really, really obscure bands like Dead Milkmen, stuff that was a little bit more underground that we used to cover. But we were predominantly original music. And from the very get-go, the very first band I was ever in, that was our focus. And to me, that's still, to this day, is still really my focus. I'm not really a songwriter per se. I'm really good with arranging, and I'm good with like the production end of things. That sort of thing is really where my talents lie. I'm not a good lyricist. I've written a few songs, but nothing that I really think is all that good, So I kind of leave that to the people that are really good at it. I'm more of a musician, more of a supporting cast kind of role, and then performance too, and just in general.
So speaking of that, you also play with local favorite Flibberty Gibbet. People saw you guys play down at Moon Tunes. What's going on with that band right now? We've talked to Drew in the past, but what's happening right now?
Well, Flibberty Gibbet really, that band has got a lot of history. I mean, that band's been around for over 30 years. I'm not an original member of the band, but aside from Drew, I've been with the band longer than anybody else in it. Our current bass player, Eric Guido Lemon, was, I believe, the original bass player, but then shortly after he joined the band, way back in the 90s, he left the band, and Flibberty Gibbet has had a total of 7 bass players, I believe, since I've been with the band. Guido being one of them. Guido just within the last few years returned to the band. There was a time after we recorded our first studio album with Mike Von Muchow at Actual Sound Studios, we really hit it hard and toured over about a 4-state, 5-state area and really made a push for it. We played over 600 shows in that run. Then Doc was having trouble playing his guitar, and he just was frustrated, and he didn't know what was going on. And he ended up basically calling it quits because of it, because he was really just struggling. And it wasn't that much longer after that he found out he was diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's. And he was actually relieved by that diagnosis because then he finally knew what was going on and was able to treat it, So now he's on meds for it, and that is allowing him to come back and actually start playing again. So a few years ago, he booked a gig. I believe it was a Moon Tunes thing that we did, and it just went really, really well. And he asked, if I'd be interested in doing another album. I said, absolutely, for sure, let's do it. And so we picked up a new cast, with Kyle Renfro on guitar. People might know him from Slow No Wake, the yacht rock band that was really popular here the last couple of years. And then Matt Salvo on piano, who is a UWL graduate. I think he's fulfilled that contract now, but he's been at Northwestern University working in the theater department, playing piano for theater production stuff over the last couple of years. So he's been living in Chicago, but still comes back for gigs and rehearsals and everything. So he's a trooper. 2 really talented musicians, and then we brought Guido back into the fold as well on bass. So we got 3 of the Flibberty Gibbet veterans and 2 new guys. We hit the studio, and Doc, honestly, I mean, I've always admired his songwriting. Once again, because I'm just not good at it, but he's a master. I mean, he can write in so many different styles and just has a way with words. He just has a vision for it. So we went into the studio and recorded a bunch of his new songs and some of our old ones, actually, that we just never got recorded. Some of the songs on the album go way back. And I think, honestly, this album that's coming out is really, I'm proud of it. I mean, it's really top notch, especially for the budget that we had to do it with. There's not a single song on the album that was more than 3 takes. I mean, we basically went in and just laid stuff down, and that was that. And, there's a couple of spots on the album really where listening back to it that I think we probably could have done another take or 2 and kind of touched it up a little bit. But that's really, really kind of splitting hairs, I mean, and you're always your own worst critic. So I am really proud of what we have coming out here. Our new album is called A Mississippi Life. The songs on it in general are about life here in La Crosse.
What was the studio process like for that album? I know we talked to Drew in the past. Have you been working on that throughout COVID? It sounds like you guys are pretty quick, or do you guys just jump in the studio and try to knock it out as quickly as possible?
It was done before COVID. We were planning on releasing that last fall and winter sometime, was the original plan. But then COVID hit, so we kind of just went to a dead standstill and did nothing for quite a while. Since COVID has kind of been a bit more under control and the vaccines out and whatnot, then we just had a few more things to do, but most of the rhythm tracks and everything were all laid down. We all did all that stuff studio live, so we'd go in as a band and play the song with a scratch vocal track. But most of the instrumental parts like that, I mean, we did go back and overdub a few guitar solos and that sort of thing. And we had some special guests on the album. We have horns on one song. A friend of mine, Brendan Hogan, did a masterful job on horns for the title track. A Cuban buddy of mine by the name of Alfredo Carmona played congas on a track. We have Matt Becker played accordion on a track, and Jesse McDonald played some violin. John Liskane, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his last name, but he played a tambourine part on one track. And then Doc's daughter, Sequoia, sang some backing vocals on a couple of tracks, or it might have been just one track, actually. And then, of course, our producer, Mike Von Muchow, put a little seasoning in there, too, with some vocals and some guitar parts. But other than that, it's pretty much the band. And all of those tunes can be played without any of that extra stuff. That was just a little extra seasoning and stuff. When you're in the studio, you make use of the studio to really develop the song the way you want to. So most of the time when we perform it, we'll perform it as the 5-piece band that we are.
You were also doing a lot of live sound engineering around town as well. You have Liberty Gibbet, kind of kicking off again. What are you excited for in 2021, 2022?
Well, we're already booked in 4 states right now for the summer. Just about all of our shows are outdoor shows. The Leo and Leona's show is not, and the Saxon Hall show is not. But the rest of them, I think, are all outdoor shows at this point. And most of them are fairly sizable audiences as well. We're really looking to get out and perform as much as possible to really, try and push this new album and get it out there and get known with it. I mean, we're already, we established ourselves back in the late 90s and the early 2000s, traveling around, like I said, a 5-state area. So, we took a significant break, so we were going to have to reopen a lot of doors and everything. But so that's really kind of our goal right now, is to really create a buzz about the band this summer. And then we're going to hit the club scene, God willing, as far as COVID's concerned, come fall and winter. And then next summer, I think we're going to try and really hit the music festival scene. So you can see us at music festivals in Harmony Park and and whatnot. Some of the bigger or medium-sized festivals, I would say.
Well, it seems like you got a lot on your plate for this next year and a half. So if people want to find out more, what's the best avenue for them to go to?
Well, at the moment right now, Liberty Gibbet just has a Facebook page. Now, we used to have a website, and we're looking to get that up and running again. And that, I believe, the domain name is still available, and that's going to end up being www.flibjib.com. That's FLIBJIB.com. Right now, I've been spending a lot of time developing our EPK, which is electronic press kit for booking purposes, and posters and all the stuff that we need for touring. That's really been my focus. Before the tour hits, we're going to have that website up and running. We're planning on really hitting it hard and playing a lot. You can see us at Dees Fest, which is the end of July. It's Cheech's festival. Everybody knows Cheech. So that's here in La Crosse. Starting at the beginning of July and going all the way through the summer, we're going to be playing pretty much 2 to 3 times a week.
La Crosse Local Podcast is a production of River Travel Media. Do you have an interview idea you'd like to share with us? Message us on Facebook at La Crosse Local. Find out more about us at lacrosselocal.com, and you can subscribe to the La Crosse Local Podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you like us, rate us 5 stars. We appreciate it.